Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition in our regulatory series. We took a break over summer because it was busy and people were working, and now we're trying to get back together, and we'll be doing these every month for the rest of the year. There haven't been a tremendous amount of changes in the landscape for us, but there have been some important updates we want to make sure we share with you guys, and then also making sure everybody does fully understand what's happening and why, because the products that are new with the new refrigerants are going to start rolling out into our market. And it's going to be a discussion that people have to have with homeowners and fellow business owners. We want to make sure that everybody's prepared to do that or has the best resources possible to do that. So to get started, one thing that I think is super important is talking about preparation for this. We as a base leadership team met yesterday all day, and part of what we talked about is how we best prepare ourselves to usher you guys through this transition, whether it be commercial equipment in jobs that are being quoted out into the future, or residential equipment, and you're having a discussion with the homeowner talking about mildly flammable refrigerant. What we do know is the best thing we can do is help you guys prepare in advance and make sure you're armed with as much information as possible. So our goal at base is to do that, is to over prepare so that as this transition happens, it is as seamless as humanly possible. So preparation is key. Think about how you're preparing your businesses, your teams, as we go through this presentation. So a couple of things that we're going to cover today. I am going to just do a high-level review of the AIM Act. It's what's driving all of this. I think, especially in an election season, you're going to hear lots of different information in narratives regarding all of this, and I want to make sure everybody understands what's going on and why. We'll do a little bit of an overview on A2Ls. If you guys want a deeper dive, we are doing training. In fact, we're doing training this morning at one of our branches and have several customers there learning all about A2Ls. And then just a quick update on federal and local incentives. There have been some changes, and I can talk a little bit about the IRA money for Illinois, or lack thereof right now, I should say. Okay, to start, I just want everybody to know this is all being tied to the American Innovation in Manufacturing, also known as the AIM Act. However, the AIM Act was brought into law in 2020. Prior to that, addressing refrigerant in our industry has been going on since the 80s. And actually, in 1987, there was a document called the Montreal Protocol that was issued. It was entered into play actually in 1989 officially. But what that did is it helped us transition from R22 to 410A. Because what the Montreal Protocol was saying was that we need to have less ozone depleting products in our environment. And so when that happened, we made that transition. Those of you that have been doing this long enough remember the transition from 22 to 410A. And that continued, right? We did still see production of R22. There was supposed to be a complete elimination. I think at times people were threatening the EPA police were going to come and check installations, though I've yet to ever see that happen. So think about that. That's 1987, 1989. That whole piece started where they were saying we needed less ozone depleting refrigerants. In 2016, something called the Kigali Amendment came into play, and what that did is the Kigali Amendment amended the Montreal Protocol. And what that really was talking about the production and consumption of hydrofluorocarbons and the impact they have on global warming potential. So the way we're looking at the environment shifted a little bit. And when that happened, what they realized is that 410A is really bad from a global warming potential standpoint. So while it may be a little less ozone depleting, it is causing factors that can really ruin our environment. So the amendment, this Kigali Amendment, was ratified in 2019. And when that happened, the US, along with 135 other countries, came together and ratified this. And then in 2020, what wound up happening is the component of this, which is the AIM Act that came out of it, was put into play. And that's what we're going to talk at a high level about today. But the reason I bring this up and that little history lesson is because it has covered several presidential administrations. So this isn't, as you get into this discussion with consumers, it is not a one party or another party. This has been on the agenda of our government, right, wrong, or indifferent, for many years in an attempt to protect and preserve our environment. That being said, what came out of the AIM Act is 3 phases. There is the allocation portion of the AIM Act, and that is driven at that bulk phase down of all hydrofluorocarbons by 2036. And to do that, they're reducing the amount and the supply that's let into our country, let in actually, into what manufacturers have access to. This did start in 2022, so this isn't new. We really haven't felt the full effects in our market of the restriction of 410A. It's kind of been an anomaly. Everyone thought once this happened, we would start to see prices skyrocket. That really hasn't happened yet. But we are starting to see the introduction of the what we'll learn about A2L products come in and hit us. The second part is this technology transition piece. This is really where most of us are living and breathing and trying to figure out, what we're going to offer and what we're going to sell. As you can see, there are several different sectors that were called out, chillers and VRF included. And you can see the dates of when that equipment can no longer be manufactured using 410A product. That has probably been the biggest challenge on our end, quite honestly, as a distributor, is figuring out what to bring in. On the residential and light commercial split side, we were offered a sell-through, which is fantastic. So we can sell this product as a system all of next year. Johnson Controls, our primary vendor, in Bosch, I should say, need to stop manufacturing that product for 410A by the end of this year, but we do have a year of sell-through. On the chiller side, that manufacture date is also January 1st. If you guys are in the commercial space, anything quoted to you is going to be with that new refrigerant going into projects largely for next year, as well as on the VRF side. That manufacturing date is 2026. So there is a little bit of extra wiggle room on that, but it's still something that we need to think about, whether it's a project or when on the residential side, when you're going to start transitioning this to homeowners and consumers. But again, we did get a sell-through, which is fantastic. That was something we weren't sure we would get. And thanks to some of the good people that lobbied for us, that did happen. The last piece is refrigerant management, and we'll go to all these in a little bit more detail, but refrigerant management is really about the reclaim and recovery of 410A and how that's managed and administered. Again, because it's been deemed a refrigerant with a higher global warming potential, obviously you want less of that into the environment. Historically, contractors already do a very good job of this because you have a vested interest in doing so. However, they are putting a little bit more focus on this going forward. I do want to say there are several other pieces to these puzzles that we'll learn more about, that's in relation to components. You guys might have the question, okay, Johnson Controls, for example, can't build a 410 system any longer after December 31st of this year, but what about replacement coils? What about replacement units or the parts and pieces, compressors that go into this? Those still can be manufactured, just so everybody here knows. So it's not that you're going to not have access to the components you guys need to service equipment that's already in the field today. What you will see a change starting in January 25 is that equipment will come with a label on it that says for servicing existing equipment only. So that will be one change you will see. But I don't want anyone here to think that that's not going to be available to you. We at Base Solutions will be stocking the service and repair parts you guys need to service whatever you have in the field today. Okay, so why we talked high level about this, the global warming potential. If you look at R410A, and I was talking about it's not ideal for the ozone. It's at 2088. The regulation, as you saw in the previous slide, brought it down to under 700. So that is a giant shift if you look at that in the world of refrigerants. Now they are labeled mildly flammable, which we'll talk about a little bit. But they are actually very close to 410A. So despite being very far in the spectrum in terms of what their global warming potential is, the componentry and how they operate are very similar overall. But again, this is a message when you think about how you package this to a consumer or a business owner, we're talking about putting in a refrigerant that's substantially better for our environment overall. Okay, just looking at the refrigerant transition process again, for those that are new or have been a part of this, A1 refrigerants are ones that are not considered mildly flammable. So these are things like R12, stuff that, we have seen in our field. We've transitioned into R22, R410, and now R454B. So anyone new to this, you guys can kind of see the walk that the HVAC industry in the United States has been transitioning to for the past several years. And it's no surprise that now we've kind of moved into this direction, non-ozone depleting and low global warming potential. But again, think about these types of things have been going on for those who've been doing it a long time. You remember R12 to R22. You certainly remember R22 to 410. This is the next step. What makes this a little different than those in the past is the flammability potential of 454B, as well as the refrigerant detection systems that may be required to operate this type of system that we didn't have. I think the other piece to note is, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but there's not a drop-in option also. This is completely disparate compared to what we've had in the past due to the flammability potential. So an A2L, if anybody asks, this shows you what an A2L looks like. So an A1, as I said, it's not very toxic. It is certainly on the flammability scale, not very flammable. If you think about A2Ls though, so you see it has a little bit of flammability. It's the threshold of it is quite small, but they're currently used today in systems that consumers are familiar with. If anybody has ever had a window air conditioning unit, that likely had an A2L in it. Cars, more than 80% of new vehicles sold in the US today have an A2L refrigerant in them. So they're used in automotive air conditioners, like I said, window shakers. They're out there. They're used in mini splits, VRF systems, chillers, hot water heaters, and other products across the world today. It's newer to the US. It is not new to most industries we touch and serve. And just as a perspective, again, from a consumer standpoint, in 2018, so several years ago, there were more than 26 million A2L HVAC units sold throughout the world in homes and businesses. So it is not a new concept. And it's nothing anyone should be terrified of, because if this was such a thing, this flammability, we would have heard about it. The difference now is they're now being allowed in larger size units. That's something that we hadn't had before. But again, nothing to be terrified of. The A on it indicates low toxicity, and then the 2 indicates it's mildly flammable, and the L indicates it has a low burning velocity. So if you want to understand what an A2L is, that L is tied to burning velocity. And when you think about the burning velocity, and we have classes that talk through this, you need a sustained flame to burn this and ignite it. This is not going to be something that easily sparks. Again, if you're talking to a homeowner and you're thinking about this, they have a stove that's probably more deadly in their home and more likely to start a fire than anything in their HVAC system ever will do. Okay, when we talk about the scale of 700, you can see that there are 2 refrigerants that are being released into our market. There's R32. R32 has long been out there. It's a globally accepted refrigerant. It is the one that Goodman Daikin has selected. You will also see it appear in some Johnson Controls products on the ductless side as they are released in the new A2L models going forward. And then there's 454B. You can see that as an extremely low global warming potential. Part of the reason why every other manufacturer selected 454B is because there is a strong likelihood that in 2029, that global warming potential threshold is going to be set even lower, and it looks like it may land at 500. So if that's the case, what manufacturers have elected to do is to be a little bit more future-proof, and for their primary lines of equipment, or where they're selling the bulk volume of it, selected a refrigerant that's under that threshold to try to forego having another equipment change in the future. So that's 454B. There are 2 options. You will see 454B branded under the Opteon name as well. And then, of course, carriers calling it Pure on Advance, but they're the same refrigerants, whether it's Opteon, Puron Advanced, or you hear 454, they are all the same refrigerants. When you want to talk about the comparison, the properties of 454 is very similar to 410, so it is quite easy and cost effective to apply in any new equipment without major modifications. So that is something, make sure your techs and your teams are very familiar with. It shouldn't be scary to put this in. If you look at the capacity, the flow rates, the discharge pressures, they're all very similar. So they're not going to be operating with a refrigerant that's drastically different. And also because of the close match to 410, Johnson Controls and other manufacturers were much more easily able to convert the designs with minimal changes. So when you see equipment rolled out for 454B, it's not going to look much different. The furnaces won't look different. The coils won't really look different. There just may be a detection system added on. When you think about the commercial space, those units don't look different. Nothing is dramatically changing because they don't have to. So key componentry, there will be a different compressor, of course, and different pieces inside, but they aren't dramatically having to make changes. So the things you like about the equipment today will likely stay. The other piece is when you look at the 454B, it does have a relatively low temperature glide. So that actually could be topped off after leaks. Kelly and Bruce and the Johnson Controls police may tell you no. But in the situation where there could be a leak, there is a potential to top that off on the 454 side. So stuff we're familiar with, we're used to working with. It shouldn't be horribly different from a technician or install standpoint. But important to know, you cannot use 454B in an existing system. There are no drop-in replacements. I repeat, you cannot use this in a 410A system. It should only be used in systems for which it was designed. While I just told you the performance characteristics are very similar, there are major differences in terms of the flammability and safety requirements tied to it. Also, building codes. So building codes in Illinois, I went and pulled the city of Chicago. They have long held A2L designations of how to operate and what the code is for applying that product. But you should always check building codes beforehand. Now we're starting to see the different fire jurisdictions setting the standard or the rules and regulations of what has to happen. For example, in the multifamily commercial space, we are learning that projects may require a chase being added for the line sets, so that should the mildly flammable refrigerant ignite at some point or cause a spark, that it's contained within a chase so it doesn't spread throughout a building. These are some major changes that we have not seen in our industry before. So as you're embarking on a project, think about what that looks like. And I certainly suggest getting a good source of information on the fire side regarding building codes, because that is one change that is new that we haven't really had to see before. But again, codes are going to be important. We are trying to pull codes for you guys and have them at the ready. Again, I poured through the city of Chicago commercial building codes. It was a little painful, I'm not going to lie. But within them, there was mention of A2Ls in there already, and that has long been in there. So just know it's coming and familiarize yourself with it. When I talk about flammability and safety, if you guys were to think in your head, what's the number one concern people have? It is the flammability portion of it. Should we be concerned about it? The short answer is no. A2Ls, as I said, they're not new. We talked about this. They've been sold in most vehicles in the US for years. They're in people's homes today. So again, this is not a brand new product. What is different is that there are safety standards and individual state building codes. So whether you're selling into Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin for our territory, you just need to make sure you check prior to the installation of any of these, or even job quoting, that we know what the code is and what's required. The safety protocols in general are largely the same because it's only mildly flammable. But like, for example, in Johnson Controls in the York side, they have service and installation training to help you guys during the transition. we are also providing service and installation training for you and your teams. So certainly let your TM or store manager know what you're looking for, and we will walk you through it and get some stuff scheduled. I do want to note that while an A2L does have a high minimum ignition energy, so you'll see that as an MIE. This has been listed in some tech documents now, compared to a more flammable refrigerant, which is propane. Again, I said they need a sustained flame, and something like static is not going to ignite it. A toaster is not going to ignite it. Basic things in the home is not going to ignite it. And this has been extensively tested in real world scenarios to ensure that this is something that's not going to just go up quickly. That being said, I do want to restate this is not propane. I have heard contractors under the false belief that propane is involved. It is not. So again, propane is an A3. This is something less than propane. Another reminder, again, if you take anything away and you're speaking with a business owner or homeowner, these are safe with common electrical components. Again, think of a light switch, a hair dryer, a toaster, a lamp, static electricity. None of these things are going to ignite this product. So it's not a going concern, whether it's in someone's home. And again, if is a key takeaway, remember, if somebody is pushing back or a little nervous about it, it's in their car today. They're driving around. People get in accidents every day. Cars are not just blowing up and starting on fire at the ready because there's an A2L in them. But because there is a potential for all of this, there is a leak detection system called an RDS. It's a refrigerant detection system, or you might see it labeled as an automatic leak detection, an ALD system. And they're required under certain conditions. Why I say certain conditions is, particularly in the commercial space, there are a lot of factors regarding tonnage and airflow and design, whether or not the RDS needs to be added. The commercial quoting team for you guys, our commercial sales team, they know how to determine this for you, and they've been quoting 454 well going into next year. On the residential side, it's a little bit different. Equipment that contains more than 4 pounds of refrigerant is generally speaking going to require an RDS system. If you think about a York microchannel 3-ton entry-level unit, that may not, because that doesn't hold as much refrigerant. Certainly a 2.5 and a 2-ton on the microchannel side will not, unless you're getting into long line sets, and that's another factor. There is, and I'll show you in a minute, there is a calculator for this that Johnson Controls launched, which will make it easier to determine if you need it. Out of the gate, though, manufacturers, whether it's York or Bosch in our world, have elected to provide their coils with RDS already on it. The reason being is you want to get coils out into the market, part one. And part two, there is a bit of a learning curve here in terms of when it does or does not need to be applied. Future state, you will be able to make that selection and get what you need from base. We are going to bring in our manufacturer coils with RDS already on it. So when you get a York coil or a Bosch coil, that will be there for the time being. And then what will be able to be happened is you can order these sensors and field install them. That's an example of it, one of the sensors. It basically looks like a cord with that pops into the control board. It's going to go on the coil or on the air handler. There's a sensor mounted. Okay, so you can see that the sensor is going to wire into a mitigation board. Some people also call that a dissipation board. And what that means is it's going to dissipate the refrigerant that's been detected. This is both residential and commercial, works the same way, and this does not vary across manufacturer. So just know that if you know how to use this or know what it is, you shouldn't have questions regarding how it operates. So what's going to happen is it's going to turn off heat when it detects refrigerant. Then it's going to turn off compression and turn on the indoor fan to allow the indoor fan to dissipate any of the refrigerant that is being detected. That's why I actually think dissipation board's a little better, because it's really describing what's happening. The board's going to be mounted on the outside of the coil or in the control box of the air handler. And then what happens is I believe it runs for about 5 minutes, and it's trying to validate that the refrigerant has been evacuated from the area or dissipated down to an acceptable level, and then the equipment will refire. But this is something very important you're going to want to know, and you're going to want to have your team know. We will work on having bullet points, talking tips regarding this for a consumer as we get closer to the launch. There are also third-party coil manufacturers, Aspen and ADP, whose new coils we will have in stock. ADP launched their Flex Coil, and their Flex Coil has the ability to field install the RDS out of the gate. So you have one coil that could be used for 410 or 454B. And if it's 454B, you would throw on the RDS. What I'm going to tell you is, though it is an elective add-on, I would highly, highly, highly encourage your teams from the get-go to make it a best practice to put it on everything until they understand better how you calculate whether it's needed or not. I just think from a risk and safety standpoint, you don't want to take that on, and I wouldn't either. So if you're going to be electing to sell the ADP coils out of the gate, I would make it a standard, again, that you're putting this on everything you do. This is the RDS calculator. This is on the Ducted Solutions app. Right there is a QR code for getting that app. You will need a Navigator login. Let your salesperson or store team know if you don't have that, so we can get you set up. You can go in there and you can put in some basic information. You're going to need to obviously give it a job name, talk about the building type. It does ask if the unit in question is manufactured by Johnson Controls, but you will be able to use this broadly, because really what it's calculating is it's taking in some of the airflow conditions. It's taking into account again, the design, what the line set length looks like, how much refrigerant's in a system, and what that conditioned space looks like. You can see a picture below in the three pictures from the left, what a conditioned space looks like. So you've got a reference point there, and then it will tell you if it's required or not. This is something I would have on all my installers' phones, my salespeople's phones if they're quoting jobs. Again, the commercial team is very familiar with this. They've been using this because in the commercial space, we've had to quote jobs into next year already. But for you guys, this is something that is accessible, and it can be used for commercial and residential product. So here is again the QR code. The one on the left is for Apple. The one on the right is for Android. I would make sure everybody has that app and has it ready to be used. Transportation and storage, there's been a lot of discussion regarding both of these topics. And I'm going to explain one way, and then I'm going to take one step back and make a little tweak to it that we just learned. So we did talk about the safety around 454B, and it does carry that mildly flammable rating. That being said, they do advise to take care when traveling with it. Again, it is only mild, so like R410A, you in theory should be taking care while traveling with that. Make sure you know your state Department of Transportation regulations. Again, you may cover several states. We certainly do, but make sure you're familiar with those. You are going to be required to have a fire extinguisher on board that's strapped upright. I will talk about in a minute, because there has been an exception to be able to place these units horizontal in some cases. But as standard, you would want to think these be strapped upright, and then you want display placards that are tied to this. I went into a tool, it's called Ask A2L. I plugged in their display placards, and it told me exactly what needed to be displayed within the state of Illinois guidelines. There is no federal mandate right now regarding this, or federal advice or guidance. So you're going to need to refer to what the different states are telling you. From a storage standpoint, local fire and building codes are going to determine the storage of this. One thing we do know is you have to have a fire extinguisher in the vicinity of this product, and there is absolutely no smoking within 25 feet. Again, storage cylinders need to be stored upright. There is an exception to this I'll talk about in the next slide, but I would plan for upright in general. And then again, bulk storage guidelines, it's all tied to fire codes. I would check your fire codes. They have been updated in Illinois. When you look at the NFPA standards, when you're regarding bulk storage of A2Ls, if you have an unsprinklered warehouse, and many of you don't have warehouses, you don't have this much space, but it's 150 pounds. It's 300 pounds you can have in a sprinklered warehouse. And if you have fire rated cabinets, you can go up to 600. Where I think this may come into play, if those of you who do jobs might have equipment stored offsite, I'm sorry. If you're going to be storing large units, think about the amount of refrigerant that you're storing there and what codes may come into play, or from a safety standpoint, what you might need to take into account. Again, fire code is going to become extremely important. The International Fire Code talks about the racking, the type of walls, the entry doors, all of these things tied to A2Ls. That being said, because it's not all that different from 410, most facilities are already built in a way or structured and organized in a way which meets these. So I don't think that everyone needs to run out and go change anything, just something to be mindful of going forward, that there are some different nuances in fire code. Okay, so that's what a van looks like today. You see these units in a horizontal position. I'll talk about that in a minute. Under the materials of trade, let's be clear, it's business as usual when it comes to 454 on your truck versus 410. The same restrictions are in place regardless of the hazard. It's 440 pounds. If anyone's pulling that on one of those conversion Sprinter trucks, I would be floored. Federally, there are no placards required for service vehicles. However, the Department of Transportation does require this for the state of Illinois. I know that for sure. You're going to need to get a placard. And what it says is they need to display the presence of a flammable refrigerant. Some of you may have that in your vehicles today, but there is a specific size and it needs to be in a visible location. Again, this is something tied to the state of Illinois, or if you're in Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, I would check the placard requirements. There is no specific ventilation required, but there was a ruling that came out that said that they can be stored horizontally. That was a big change for us because that was not the case originally when this came out. What it tells you, though, is it allows the transport of A2L gases and cylinders without the pressure relief valve being in contact with the vapor space. So you just really need to be very cautious and mindful of that pressure relief valve. What they don't want is this accidentally to be knocked, if you think about that, to start releasing refrigerant into the vehicle. You wouldn't want this with any refrigerant at the end of the day, so this should be part of your best practice. But as you can see, these are racked in a certain way where that would not be the case. Again, they can go horizontal now. That is a change, but it is all tied to that pressure relief valve. This is both whether it's on a vehicle or it's if you guys have a warehouse or at Base Solutions, you may see it this way as well. All right, some best practices here for these A2Ls. Have a good source for reclaim. We did launch a reclaim program. You can get money back as long as the refrigerant you're bringing back meets the purity requirements. Right now, we have a big stack of tanks that we're ready to send back and get the money. You can receive up to $2 a pound. That goes right back to your account with us. So please, please, please participate in the reclaim space and get very familiar with doing that. It does say get good at reclaiming or stockpile it. Certainly we want to reclaim to the extent we can. The reason why it said stockpile in here is because it was long believed that price of 410 was going to spike. We have not seen that happen in our market, but that likely will come a day as the supply of it gets restricted, that we could see prices go up substantially. Tools, make sure that your tools are rated for A2Ls. All of these things you're not going to need to change tomorrow, but gas detectors, vacuum pumps, recovery systems, these are a few of them. We have been bringing them into Base Solutions to have them available to you. When you look at the 410 to 454, you can see what the difference in the tools are. But things such as purging and evacuation, they are now mandatory with A2Ls. They should have been done with A1s with 410A, but we know that sometimes people don't always do the best practice there. But when you look at this, we've got the tools, start to plan that, because if you think about the number of vehicles you have, the number of technicians, you will need to replace many of these things. Also a note on the refrigerant recovery cylinder. Again, this is not going to be a day one issue with this product, but the threading is now on the left-hand side. That is different. There is an adapter that you can get for your tools, but that's something to think about. Again, you don't want to show up somewhere and not be able to access the valve. So one other note, they're going to be marked with a red band and flammable signage markings on them. So that will be a distinguishing factor for that 454 product. I would make sure your team knows this as they see it flow in. Okay, that was a lot on refrigerant. We're going to talk about this technology transition, as it's called, real quick. And this is regarding the sell-through of the equipment that's out there and what that's going to look like. So this is a high-level view of what's happening, whether it's a packaged piece of equipment, both commercial and residential, like a residential packaged unit, whether it's a split system, both commercial and residential. And keep in mind, ductless applies to all of this. Then there's the VRF, VRVs, and then the whole componentry piece. So there is a 3-year sell-through on anything packaged. So res pack or commercial packaged unit, that's fantastic. However, they only can be manufactured in the 410A platform through this year. We have brought in equipment to enable you to keep 410 for a period of time. However, we are transitioning to that new commercial product going into next year. We're starting that transition, and you will see that flow through. Most jobs on the commercial side are being quoted that way today anyway. But know that there is a 3-year sell-through allowed for that. On the split systems, this is where you have an outdoor unit and an indoor unit. Again, that's why ductless ties into it. We did get a 1-year sell-through. So again, all of next year, you can do a full system install on a 410A product. Johnson Controls and Bosch have to stop manufacturing that product without having the words for service only on them. However, you've got a year to put it in. We are bringing stock in a 410A. It's funny to think when you start to order equipment that you could use next year now on the air conditioning side, but we've been doing that to ensure we've got some product to help you through as we introduce 454 into our market. And then you see on the VRF side, similar, the full system install is prohibited after January 1st of 26. So we have a 1-year essentially sell through of that type of product. And on the component, there is no planned end date on this. So when you think about expansion valves, tubing, fan motors, ducts, all of the pieces there that are major components in a product, there is no perceived end date for 410. Okay, that's a lot of information there. One thing I will tell you, whether it's York or it's Bosch, we are working through a roadmap to provide both our internal team as well as customers on when stuff is expected to hit. We do have some 454B product in the building today, though we aren't releasing it to the masses because you need a coil with it, you need the sensors with it, you need the refrigerant, you need all the different pieces. Once we have a fully baked product, we will promote it and release it out on the residential side. On the commercial side, as I said, we've been quoting this product for the last several months, since many of our jobs are actually going out into next spring at this point. But know that we're going to have it in the building. We're going to have it for both brands, and we are starting to transition product in to get ready for next season of all crazy things in both brands, and the 454 product as well. All right, refrigerant management. Just note, certification is going to be an important component. Technicians, if they haven't already undergone this, need to be certified under Section 608 of the Clean Air Act. They have to pass an exam. The exam has to be offered by an approved technician certification program, and they've got to be able to show that they have this. That is one of the key pieces of this whole piece. Again, this isn't dramatically different from what you guys are used to today, but I think if anything to note is that a lot more restrictions and training are being required of our technicians and our field installers. To prepare, I would better educate and support your customers. I would make a plan. I certainly would have talking points available for your team in the field. We don't want people running around thinking stuff is going to start on fire, whether it be a bank or a mobile home. You need to be able to talk them through this. There is a lot of misinformation out there already, so make sure you guys are armed with facts. We can help you do that. At Base Solutions, we are training our entire internal team to help you. Certainly your salespeople are ready to support you. So I'll jump in at any point in time with anyone to kind of build out that list of talking points. Establish proper refrigerant management practices. We talked about the both the safety side as well as some of the certifications that are needed. Invest in flammable refrigerant training. I'll talk about that in a minute. We have that training going on, like I said, today at one of our branches. And then clarify local uncertainties, and we'll talk about that in terms of fire code in just a moment. All right, so homeowner education. I've got a couple scenarios out here for you guys for how to speak to this. So let's say they have a broken AC unit. Do they need to buy a whole new system? There are two options you can obviously do. If they have a broken AC condenser, they can replace the component. Or if a whole new system is required, it's going to be the new low GWP after next year. That being said, because we do have a year sell through, you may be able to put in a 410A system. That may be the case. But again, get used to that language of that they're no longer manufacturing these, because there could be a chance that they need a 3-ton system and no one has 3-ton systems anymore in the 410A platform, right? So get used to that language. What is considered a new system? You can talk a consumer through that. Can you replace the condensing unit and then the indoor coil at a later time? Absolutely. These are things that you certainly can do. Just make sure that the homeowner knows that if they're doing this at a later time, or there may be, I don't want to say consequences, but a cost change involved related to the coil that's going in or the condensing unit they're using. When you're talking about new houses and additions, really any system first charged with refrigerant after January 1st must use a GWP less than 700. Again, because there is that sell-through, you could put 410A in. I would not do that, because when you think about the serviceability of this going forward, it does not seem like a good service to a homeowner. If you leave the existing refrigerant lines in, but replace the condensing unit and indoor coil, so you put in a 454 system, is that considered new? Yes. You don't have to change refrigerant lines and things like that. Obviously, you need to flush them, but it is considered a new system. And then make sure you have a speaking point about addressing the flammability or potential for flammability. Here's an example of something you could say to a consumer or an owner. Again, but prepare yourselves for this. Training. So through ACCA, this, I believe it's 4 modules. No, it's 5 modules. It's pretty easy to complete. It's pretty inexpensive, whether you're a member or not a member of ACCA. I would have all of your technicians yourselves. I'm going through the training as we speak. But to get certified for A2Ls, I think it's important to know how to handle and work with this product. We also have live in-person trainings. Today, like I said, we're doing one today right now in Elmhurst. It's a full house. We've got many of our customers there. We've got people there that are both owners of the company as well as some of their technicians. So again, I cannot stress the importance. We've been having courses throughout the past month. We've got another one yet in Aurora if you haven't had a chance to go. And we're going to continue to do this. I think the best attended classes we've had this year, we've had 3 different rounds of 454 training, and it has been a packed audience. So if you haven't, please schedule time to come do that. Come see it. It's about 1 to 2 hours, depending upon how engaged you guys are as a group and how fast Kelly and Bruce can move through the content. But please get trained. Last piece on this is federal and local updates. There are incentives out there. What is unchanged is that there's a commitment both at the federal and the local level to support this transition to electrification and decarbonization. Big words, to support um, really conserving the environment. So again, no matter where anyone stands politically, this is something that has been happening. We saw it back in the day with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. There was a lot of dollars put forth to consumers from the federal government related to energy efficiency improvements. That has then, in our world, transitioned into what's 25C that's been out there and is continuing to go on. So I do want to note that whether it's a geothermal, it's a furnace, it's a heat pump, even an AC, there are dollars out there for consumers. For you guys, I think the most important practice to put into your business is making sure you guys are gathering good data on the type of home that product is going into, keeping good records. Record keeping has never been more important. We'll talk in a second about one of the utilities, ComEd, but you're going to need zip codes at the ready, and then getting very familiar with matching stuff up in the AHRI world. Even in the commercial space, there had been dollars out there. So those were actually quite rich. But thinking about how you're going to utilize incentives that are there for moving to more electric or more efficient products. And then you can see at the bottom, there are tax credits. The tax credit that says new on the bottom left, that is 25C. That's been in play all this year. And quite honestly, most of last year. So this 25C is not exactly new, but it's a newer piece that is out there for consumers to use. And then there are two other pieces, the homes and the HEEHR. Those are IRA programs, which I'll speak about in just a minute. You'll also see on here other rebates. So we've got utility rebates, whether you're NIPSCO, whether you're ComEd, whether you're Ameren. Those are all out there. And then the manufacturer, if you're in the Johnson Controls space on the residential world, there are rebates for York coming from the manufacturer to the consumer. All right, high level, these two pieces are part of the IRA. Again, you've heard this. This is the buzzword that says people can get about $8,000 for a heat pump in their home. There are a lot of requirements that are there. Is income contingent. So it depends upon how much, what the income levels are in each community, and then what the total cost of the system and install is to determine how much money a consumer could get. Again, you can see it's up to $8,000 on the HEEHR side. And then on the homes piece, that's more of energy management. That gets broader into windows, doors, insulation, all the rest of it. Multifamily does fall into homes. There are dollars available through this program as well. But both of these programs haven't really been rolled out into any state at this point. And I'll talk about this in a moment. So if you look at this map, this is program funding for the IRA. If it's gray, they're still preparing an application, so it hasn't even been submitted. If it's that teal color, the application has been submitted. If it's orange-ish gold, it's been approved. And then if it's green, it's been done. Okay, so as you look at this, there are two states, Wisconsin and New York, that are green. In the state of Wisconsin, it was approved for $149 million in funding. However, it has struggling to get their program out. So they have this money and it's still not being used in their market. Indiana has been approved. There's been talk about getting these funds out, but again, it's not been figured out how to do this. If you look at the state of Illinois, so we're in that teal color, we have over $263 million that we applied for that is available to us. At this time, we have been awarded $5 million of that $264 million that was available to us and that we asked for. So we're a long way from seeing any of this hit our market. So if you're thinking about how do I do this IRA piece, this should not be your main area of focus for right now because we're so far away from it becoming a reality in Illinois or Indiana. And in Wisconsin, even though it is available, no one knows how to administer it today. Okay, so as you're thinking of a focus on this, I wouldn't stress about either of those programs till stuff gets figured out and there's You can offer 25C systems. You can offer these again in the residential space. There are rebates out there for efficiencies on furnaces. On heat pumps, they have to be 16 SEER-2, and then on heat pumps, they have to be 15.2 SEER-2, and then there are HSPF and EER2 requirements. But I would practice explaining to a homeowner how these can be utilized. Many of our contractors are doing a really good job of bundling this today and putting them on their proposals, talking about how this is a reduction. So basically, you just have to pay taxes. Doesn't even matter if you get a refund back. As long as you pay taxes initially, you are eligible to get these rebates back. I would have a card available with a local tax professional to refer them to, so you guys aren't getting tied up in the minutia of where this goes on a tax form and do I qualify. And then I would, if I were you, I would think about if you put AHRI numbers on invoices, because from a consumer standpoint, that would make the claim process so much easier. If you've got your SEER-2 and HSPF2 ratings, and I should actually add EER2 ratings right there. And with the AHRI number, it should sail through. Utility. So ComEd in 2024 released an update to their requirements on the residential side. What you'll note on here is now they care about HSPF2 and EER2. And in prior years, it was just about at that point, the SEER rating. The other piece that ComEd added on the res side is contractors have to have at least 30% of their installers and techs complete both online and manufacturer training. We are checking for this at Base Solutions. When you guys are applying for rebates, we offer them directly at the counter. But when that happens, we do validate that you guys are qualified to offer these rebates in the first place, that it has a ComEd zip code, because some of the territory in which we sell does not have ComEd, and that it hits these qualifications. And this is an instant rebate we apply at the counter. We go back to ComEd and we collect the money back. So just note for this, nothing has changed. One thing we did learn from ComEd is we are not at risk of money running out. They have used about 50% of their budget that they had planned for the whole year at this point. I think for many people, business is a little slower than they would have liked this year, and that leaves the kitty still pretty full in the ComEd world. So there's no anticipation that these rebates are going away. If you sell in other markets, and I'll show you an example next, whether it's NIPSCO, People's Gas, depending on who applies to you, you guys can get matchups. This is a tool we have to show homeowner value. Everyone at Base Solutions has access to this. On the residential side, this is our YH2F, so that 15.2 SEER-2 heat pump. It is matched with a 4-ton coil in our new 80% either single stage or 2-stage furnaces. You can see the AHRI number there, the EER2, SEER-2, and HSPF2 requirements it hits. Both of these are ComEd eligible. You can see the rebate that's applied there. Neither hit the NICOR rebate that's out there. That furnace needs to be not 80% for it to hit NICOR or People's Gas. You just see there's a NIPSCO heat pump rebate available to it. It is also eligible for 25C credit, and IRA future state, when the states get their heads around how to use this money, it would qualify for that. So there are some tools where you can walk a consumer through. If you were to sell this system in particular, the consumer can get $1,200 off the top and get $2,000 tax credit. That's pretty lucrative if you're selling this system to a consumer. I think it's really nice offering. We have other selling resources that we've created. So this will walk you through the different gas company, utility, again, ComEd and NIPSCO are primaries, as well as 25C, what the requirements are and what the end dates are. We do not foresee any of this going away. As we said, if anything, they may change, but they're here to stay. So we will update this as we get the details about 2025 and beyond, and fill those rebates in there. But last resource is our team at Base Solutions, whether it's Kelly and Bruce on our tech team, any of our salespeople, both commercial and residential, or a store team. We're all here to serve you and help walk you guys through this transition. Next month, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the product flow in. So we're going to talk about commercial, what's changed high level, and then when you guys can expect to see products hit, as well as on the residential side, we'll do a little bit walk through our roadmap of when things are coming, both Bosch and York. What I do want to reiterate is whether it's Bosch or York, the product will be 454B. We did order pallets of refrigerant to come in, so we will have 454 in our barn. And we have extensive training. If you remember nothing else on this, if you want training for just your team, please reach out to your salesperson. We're happy to provide whatever we can, provided we can make it work. We will try to meet your needs, and we're going to continue to hold classes. As a reminder, if you haven't gone to a class, please, there is an Aurora class on October 8th. You guys could still attend. And one last note, Kelly, thank you for putting in the chat. Do follow the manufacturer manual on where to install the RDS on the coil. Everybody does have a specific spot. What I was speaking to is specific to Johnson Controls. However, Kelly's right. There may be other places or nuanced areas where they're going to want you to put that RDS. Thank you, Kelly. Any other questions, please throw them in a chat, or you guys can unmute yourselves and throw out a question if anyone has any. All right, this is been recorded. We are going to archive this and share the presentation. For those of you who have joined, please let me know, reach out to me if you have topics you want us to cover that we didn't cover today. Knowing that our next round will go into more detail on what product is coming in and what differences are in some of the products. And if there's any type of rebate updates, I certainly will share those with you guys. But thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and please share any feedback you guys have with me. Thank you.